The moment Lieutenant Logan Mercer stepped off the shuttle onto the training grounds of the Xentar Research Array, he regretted not bringing more water. The binary suns overhead beat down on the barren granite plain, heat rippling over the angular shadows of alien structures. The Xentari, a cephalopod-like species with a particular fondness for psychological and physical endurance experiments, had designed this place with the aesthetic of a prison and the temperature of a blast furnace. A tall figure glided toward him, Professor Zoru, the Xentari in charge of the interspecies cognitive trials. His long appendages moved with deliberate grace, though Logan noticed the faint shimmer of a personal cooling field surrounding him. "Lieutenant Mercer," Zoru said, his translator unit clipped at an angle to his upper thorax, "you have been selected for the Krellick Path trial. You may consider this an honor." Logan wiped sweat from his brow. "If it's anything like the last honor you gave us, I'm still picking synthetic resin out of my boots." Zoru's gaze didn't shift. "This trial is more refined. You will navigate a field of pressure-sensitive detonators. Each plate has a randomized threshold and trigger signature. Your goal is to cross it without triggering a single one." Logan squinted at the far field. A vast expanse of flat, pale stone stretched almost 100 meters. No markings, no indicators, just silence and sun. "You want me to walk through a minefield," he said. "Not walk," Zoru corrected. "Traverse. Walking implies simplicity. This is not simple. You will be monitored for neural activity, cardiovascular strain, and decision-making patterns. You may withdraw at any time, though this will be noted in your performance record." Logan scanned the horizon. "What's stopping me from crawling across?" "The plates detect weight distribution and kinetic flow. Movement patterns outside expected bipedal locomotion increase detonation probability. So no crawling, correct, and no mapping the field in advance. You may study it from the platform for up to 20 minutes before your attempt begins. No drones, no tools, no markers. Just your eyes." Logan looked back toward the field. He saw nothing, no seams, no color variation, just 100 meters of death baked under twin suns. "Anyone done this before?" Logan asked. 3 other species have attempted. 2 failed catastrophically. 1 succeeded with minor injury. "You are the first human." Logan narrowed his eyes. "You're testing adaptability. We are testing perception and pattern recognition under threat. Human adaptability is of interest." A small viewing platform had been constructed 10 meters from the start of the field. Logan climbed up, pulled a handkerchief from his back pocket, and wiped his neck. He sat cross-legged in the center, eyes scanning the lines of stone. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Then, as the light shifted slightly, he saw at barely perceptible differences in the way dust settled. Some shapes were marginally cleaner, others slightly recessed. The sun's angle betrayed faint outlines. He leaned forward, mentally charting distances. There was a pattern, not uniform but not random either. Clusters, not rows. He counted gaps, marked timing between breeze shifts, watched how the dust moved. After 18 minutes, he stood and stepped off the platform. Zoru watched from a shaded alcove. Several other Xentari researchers joined him, bodies half submerged in hydration gel. A smaller drone hovered above Logan, recording everything. The first step was easy. The second, a gamble. By the 5th, Logan had committed to a rhythm. He moved like a man walking a tightrope made of glass. Each step hovered half a second before touching down. His eyes never left the next 2 meters. He didn't blink for nearly a minute straight. At step 12, he paused. A gust of wind shifted dust over a tile he'd previously marked safe. He bent slightly, hands out for balance, and adjusted his arc by 3 degrees. Zoru's translator clicked. He adapted. The Xentari beside him shifted slightly. He recalculated mid-motion. No previous subject has done that successfully. By the 40-meter mark, Logan's shirt clung to him like a second skin. He was dehydrated. His legs trembled. He ignored the pain in his arches. At 60 meters, a new problem emerged. The sun changed angle again, shadows shifting. The pattern he'd memorized evaporated. He stopped completely. "Why did he stop?" asked one of the researchers. "He cannot see the plates anymore," Zoru replied. "The visual indicators have vanished." Logan breathed through his nose, slow and even. He couldn't risk a mistake. He scanned his memory, the gaps, the spacing, the pattern logic. If the pattern extended consistently, the next plate would be 5 feet forward, slightly to the right. He stepped there, nothing, then again. And again, at 80 meters, a muscle in his left calf spasmed. He dropped to one knee instinctively. A soft beep echoed through the air. The plate beneath him activated a warning sequence. He froze. The drone above zoomed closer. Zoru leaned forward. "If he moves," one researcher said, "the plate will trigger." Logan's breathing grew shallow. He reached slowly into his vest pocket, pulled out a coin, a simple metal token from Earth. He flicked it forward with a practiced motion. It landed 3 feet ahead, no detonation. He shifted his weight to his right leg, then back. The plate didn't trigger fully. It was a false alarm, a test within the test. He stood slowly, final 10 meters. Each step felt like it took a year. Then, with a final stride, he stepped off the field. A chime sounded. Zoru approached as Logan collapsed to one knee, soaked in sweat. "You succeeded," the professor said. Logan looked up, blinking against the sun. "That was your idea of refined," Zoru tilted his head. "You adapted, you recalculated. You demonstrated resilience, cognitive flexibility, and accurate pattern extrapolation under threat. You passed." Logan pulled the handkerchief back out, now stained with dust and sweat. "Do I get a bottle of water or a medal? We will provide hydration immediately." A medal would not reflect the nature of the trial. However, your data will be studied across 7 planetary systems. "Great," Logan muttered. "I get to be homework." He stood with effort. His legs trembled. Zoru gestured, and a medical unit rolled forward. 2 Xentari assistants helped Logan onto a padded bench. One of the assistants scanned his legs. Minor strain in both calves. Hydration levels below optimal. Heart rate elevated but stable. "Welcome to Cardio Tuesdays," Logan said, eyes closing briefly. Zoru observed him silently. "You did not panic. Most would have." "I was too busy trying not to die," Logan replied. "That is precisely the behavior we hope to observe." Logan tilted his head toward him. "You built a minefield to find out if people freak out. We built a minefield to understand how species solve unsolvable problems when panic is a logical response." He chuckled lightly, then winced. "Well, mission accomplished," Zoru nodded, then turned to leave. "Rest. Tomorrow we begin the cognitive recall phase. You will reconstruct the path from memory." Logan stared after him. "Of course we do." The med unit hummed softly as it administered fluids. He laid back, staring at the strange sky above. Somewhere out there, someone was probably solving alien math problems or translating obscure dialects. He just walked through a minefield and survived by reading dust patterns. The next day, he'd have to remember every step. And if he couldn't, he looked at his legs. They still shook. Better remember it right. By late morning the next day, Logan was already regretting the breakfast rations. Something about the rehydrated kelp protein didn't sit right, and the last thing he needed before a memory-intensive debrief was gastrointestinal rebellion. He sat in a low, angular chair inside a climate-controlled observation dome that overlooked the test field from a different angle than before. The air was cool but dry, and the walls shimmered faintly with embedded data streams. A semi-circular table separated him from 6 Xentari researchers arranged in a loose arc. They hovered just above their seats in fluid suspension harnesses, their translucent neural crests pulsing with faint bioluminescence. Zoru stood nearest, facing him with what passed for academic eagerness in a species that lacked facial expressions. He gestured to a projection pad embedded in the floor, and a scaled hologram of the minefield sprang to life between them, every plate rendered in faint gray, none labeled. "You will now reconstruct your path through the field," Zoru said. "Verbal memory only, no pointing, no guessing. Describe each step by relative position and distance." Logan pinched the bridge of his nose. "You know I was heat-exhausted and running on adrenaline, right? You passed our trial. Your cognitive processing during extreme duress is the subject of this phase." "All right," he said, sitting back. "Let's start with the first 5. I stepped out and veered 1 meter left of center. First tile had a faint depression, not visual, more sensed through dust distribution. Second was 2 meters forward. Same pattern. Third eye hesitated. There was a slight change in dust behavior. I shifted angle, maybe 15 degrees. A low chime sounded. One of the researchers tapped a control node and the corresponding plates lit up in blue on the hologram. "That is correct," Zoru said. "Continue." By the time he reached the midpoint, Logan's shirt stuck to his back again, but not from heat this time. His temples throbbed. He paused, eyes half-lidded, trying to recall the moment his visual reference vanished and he'd switched to predictive patterning. I had no visual cues past 40 meters. I relied on the pattern I'd built in my head. It was clustered like a tessellation, but irregular enough to force recalculations every third or fourth step. "You estimated spacing without visual anchors," Zoru said. "Describe your internal model." "I used spacing between previously confirmed safe tiles, then tracked direction changes from those. I figured whatever logic built the field would maintain some internal consistency. Even if it wasn't symmetrical, it wouldn't be chaotic." Another researcher adjusted a control, and a secondary display appeared, this one showing a neural scan taken during the trial. Logan didn't recognize the patterns, but the way the Xentari crests flickered suggested surprise. "You formed and revised a spatial map in under 13 seconds, said the one nearest to Zoru. "I didn't time it," Logan muttered. "I was a bit preoccupied." Zoru flicked a tendril toward an assistant, who glided away and returned moments later with a clear bulb of water suspended in a magnetic grip. Logan took it, sipped, then drained it entirely. "Would you like a rest interval?" Zoru asked. "I'm fine," Logan lied. "Just don't ask me to do math." They continued. He recalled each movement, even the misstep where he dropped to his knee. The field projection updated with each correct detail, and by the end, a glowing path snaked across the entire virtual expanse. When he finished, a long pause followed. None of the Xentari moved. Finally, Zoru turned toward the others. All recorded species failed during this phase. Their neural maps decayed within an hour. This, he gestured toward the glowing path, was reconstructed after more than 20 planetary hours. One of the researchers glided slightly forward. "How did you retain the pattern?" "I didn't memorize it. I built a logic structure to predict it. Once I understood the behavior of the plates, I didn't need the exact positions." Zoru tilted slightly. "You constructed a behavioral algorithm from physical cues under threat of death." "I didn't think of it that way. I was just trying to not explode." They conferred briefly in their native clicks and pulses, which the translator didn't bother converting. Logan waited, flexing his fingers to ease cramping. His hands still ached from the tension of holding them out for balance. Zoru turned back. "There is another task." "Of course there is. You will now rewalk the field. This time, the plate positions will change but retain the same logic pattern." Logan stared. "You want me to solve it again, but with a different layout, with the same design principles. And if I step wrong, this time the plates are inert. We are measuring your ability to recognize the logic, not avoid danger." He stood slowly. "You could have led with that." The field had been cleared of wind-blown dust and reset. No visible differences from yesterday, but Logan knew better than to trust that. 2 assistants escorted him to the starting point. The heat had receded slightly, but the stone underfoot was still warm. A thin breeze stirred the edges of his uniform. He took 2 steps forward and stopped. "You said same logic. That means clusters, not uniform spacing." He scanned the surface. No cues this time, no dust, no shadows, just memory and deduction. He moved again. The first 5 steps came quickly. He'd recognized the same spacing rhythm. Then he paused, adjusted. The 6th tile was wider than expected. He recalculated. Behind him, the researchers watched in silence. A new drone hovered above, this one broadcasting a live feed to an off-world academic symposium. At the halfway point, Logan slowed. The clusters had shifted in spacing, but not in pattern type. He realized the layout was based on a Fibonacci spiral, a naturally occurring structure. The plates weren't random. They spiraled outward from a central axis. He pivoted slightly and resumed. When he reached the far edge, a soft tone signaled completion. Zoru approached. "You identified the base structure. It was either that or guess and fall on my face." It took the Xentar 3 days to identify a similar pattern. They used a 6-member cognitive pool. Well, I had cereal and sarcasm. Zoru considered this. Your species continues to produce unexpected results. Logan rubbed his knees. Yeah, try putting us in traffic. You will rest. Tomorrow we begin Phase 3, he groaned. There's a Phase 3, Zoru gestured to a data slab. We will simulate pattern logic overload and observe your neural limits. Neural limits sounds like a spa day. As the assistants guided him back into the facility, Logan glanced over his shoulder at the field. From up close, it was still just stone, flat, deceptively simple. But from above, the logic emerged. Invisible to instinct but not to reason, back in the medical suite, a technician scanned his joints. Mild inflammation in the left patella, muscle fatigue consistent with prolonged microcorrections. Logan nodded. Feels about right. You require electrolytic restoration and sleep, no stimulant intake for the next 6 hours. He lay back on the bench as the rehydration unit hissed softly. The lights dimmed. From outside, the faint hum of analytical drones drifted through the walls. Another day, another alien test. He closed his eyes. If they wanted a demonstration of what humans could endure, they'd better start taking notes fast. By the time Logan entered the simulation chamber, his knees had stiffened enough to make stairs a diplomatic incident. The chamber, housed in the subterranean core of the research array, pulsed with low-frequency hums. It resembled an auditorium built by someone who had only ever heard rumors of right angles. Organic curves flowed into one another, every surface faintly iridescent, as if the walls themselves were considering whether to participate in the experiment. He paused at the threshold, noting the lack of visible equipment. Just an open space the size of a basketball court, surrounded by 6 concentric rings of translucent material that shimmered faintly with embedded circuitry. From the far end, Zoru motioned him forward. You will remain standing. The test begins when you are ready, said Zoru, now half submerged in an array of interface tendrils that linked directly into the chamber's control core. Any chance this one ends with a back massage? Logan asked, stretching one arm across his chest. No, Zoru answered. This phase will assess real-time abstraction capacity under multi-layered pattern acceleration. Logan exhaled through his nose. Right, just what a guy with sore knees wants, multi-layered acceleration. Zoru gestured to a low pedestal in the center of the chamber. Step onto the focal node and maintain upright position. Stimulatory overlays will project around you. You must identify emergent logic hierarchies and respond with directional gestures. Delay or error will result in cognitive interference pulses calibrated to your species' tolerance window. Logan blinked. So if I don't solve your alien Rubik's Cube fast enough, you zap my brain, not zap, stimulate. Great, that's somehow worse. He stepped onto the pedestal. It adjusted slightly under his weight, then locked into position. A circular band of light rose slowly around him, then dissolved into a lattice of floating symbols, shapes, and shifting glyphs. At first, they moved in slow, predictable orbits. Then the pace doubled, then tripled. He raised one hand and pointed toward a cluster that formed a repeating triangle spiral. It froze in place, faded, and was replaced with a denser set of moving elements. Zoru's voice came through a recessed speaker. Correct. Sequence 1 complete. Proceed. Logan's eyes narrowed. The next set rotated along 3 axes. He tracked the alignment of an arc that passed through each glyph once every rotation. He caught it on its 3rd pass and gestured again. Another freeze and fade. The 3rd set didn't rotate. Instead, the colors pulsed in an irregular rhythm. He waited, counted the interval between pulses, and then realized the rhythm wasn't random, it was a prime-based beat pattern. He timed his gesture to the 7th pulse. Nothing happened. Then a sharp sting pulsed behind his right ear. He flinched. Error, Zoru noted. Incorrect hierarchy identified. Logan clenched his jaw. You could have just buzzed me like a quiz show. Stimulation intensity is currently at 20%. Lovely. The next projection shimmered into view. This time, the glyphs formed branching lines that reshaped with each second, building toward something fractal. Logan resisted the urge to blink. His temples began to ache. He traced a downward motion with both hands simultaneously. The field paused, then dissolved. Sequence 4 complete, Zoru confirmed. Proceed. By the sixth set, Logan's legs began to tremble from standing. Sweat beaded along his brow. The patterns spun faster now, some changing configuration mid-rotation. He swayed slightly, then locked his knees straight, regretting it instantly. He misjudged a shifting stack of geometric projections and received a second jolt, this one sharp enough to blur his vision. He staggered. Pause sequence, Zoru said. The chamber dimmed slightly. A side panel opened and a medical technician glided in on a low hover platform. The figure was smaller than the others, with delicate manipulators and a diagnostic scanner shaped like a folded fan. Logan steadied himself as the scanner passed across his chest and shoulders. Elevated cortisol, mild dehydration, neural fatigue markers above baseline, the technician said calmly. I could have told you that for free, Logan muttered. Do you wish to withdraw? Zoru asked. Logan glanced toward him. If I say yes, do you still get your data? We would receive partial metrics. The complete sequence set requires one more phase. He flexed his hand slowly. Then start it. Just keep the brain zaps under 30%. The chamber lit again, brighter this time. The final sequence unfolded 4 overlapping layers of rotating and pulsing elements, each moving independently. The air felt thicker, or maybe that was just the blood rushing to his head. He planted his left foot slightly outward to brace himself, then raised both hands. He didn't try to track each layer. That was a trap. Instead, he looked for the one thing that remained unchanged across all layers. One symbol, a hooked crescent, shifted position constantly but never altered its orientation. It was the anchor. He moved both hands inward, forming a circle, then pointed down. The chamber went still. Zoru's voice came after a moment. Final sequence complete. Neural signature consistent with predictive abstraction rather than reactive analysis. Noted. The lights dimmed and the lattice dissolved. Logan stepped off the pedestal, legs buckling slightly. The technician caught him under one arm and guided him toward a reclining chair that had risen from the floor. He collapsed into it with a sound somewhere between a groan and a sigh. Zoru approached, unhooking from the interface array. You recognized the invariant during a layered interference cascade. Lucky guess, Logan said, eyes closed. Unlikely. Your EEG patterns began to stabilize after the 5th second. The technician adjusted the recline angle, then applied a cooling patch to the back of his neck. Logan flinched but didn't protest. You've completed all 3 phases, Zoru said, and maintained functional coherence. Not sure I'd call this functional, Logan muttered. I can't feel my thumbs. Temporary, your motor cortex is within expected recovery parameters. Logan opened one eye. So what was the point of all this? Some intergalactic science fair? Zoru folded 2 of his appendages calmly. We were evaluating the human capacity to maintain logical processing under escalating threat and abstraction without external guidance. And the results are inconsistent with projections. Your ability to form and revise logic structures while managing biological deterioration exceeds our prior models. So we're smarter than you thought. You are not smarter, Zoru said flatly. You are more disorganized. But your disorganization appears to permit lateral linkage between unrelated data sets. That quality is rare. Logan closed his eyes again. We call it winging it. Your species appears to do so with alarming frequency. The technician completed his scan and stepped back. Rehydration complete. Electrolyte balance restored. Recommend 8 hours of rest, Zoru nodded. The test series is concluded. Your performance will be submitted to the consortium's behavioral archives. You may return to your vessel after rest. Logan sat up slowly. No more zaps, no more puzzles. No. You have satisfied the criteria. He swung his legs off the chair and stood, wobbling slightly. Next time, just send a questionnaire. Zoru inclined his upper body slightly. If there is a next time, we may. Logan walked toward the exit, passing through a field that scanned him for residual neural interference. It cleared him with a soft chime. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler, lighter, the suns had shifted beyond the ridge, casting the facility in amber light. He paused, glancing back once. The chamber door had already sealed behind him. A Xentari assistant approached with a silver case. "Your personal effects," he took the case. "Thanks. Where's the Earth shuttle docked, North Quadrant, departure window in 47 minutes?" He nodded. "Plenty of time." As he walked toward the transport bay, his knees protested with every step, but he didn't care. He'd done it. No explosions, no permanent damage, and the alien psychologists had their data. He'd walked to Minefield, mapped it from memory, solved foreign logic puzzles under stress, and walked out. Not bad for a guy who once got lost in a mall parking lot. No medals, no speeches, but he'd made his mark. And somewhere in a cluster of glowing databases across the stars, his brain was now a case study. He just hoped they spelled his name right.